Today I want to delve into a real world scenario that highlights some of the complexities and challenges in international trade, particularly when it comes to payment terms and Incoterms 2020. Imagine a situation where an overseas buyer is keen on purchasing a very large quantities of animal feed from multiple small to medium sized manufacturers, exporters from India, from Chhattisgarh state, from Raipur district, where there is a lot of soybean manufacturing. The animal feed is primarily a byproduct of soybean extraction. It is a cost effective commodity, but it can only be transported in very large shipload quantities, typically ranging from 50,000 to 75,000 metric tons or even more. Now, let us discuss some of the very typical types of challenges that are related with such kind of complex transactions. The challenges may relate to things like quality assurance, packaging and handling, logistics and transportation. That's very important here in this case, especially coordinating sea transportation, negotiating shipping rates and complying with the shipping regulations is complex, and negotiating with the loading, unloading of the cargo, because it is a loose cargo, cheap commodity, it has to be supplied in bulk quantities, in shipload quantities, in the hull of the ship. So negotiating with different actors for loading, unloading and handling of the cargo, inland transportation, all those challenges are there in logistics and transportation. Then the other challenge may relate to regulatory compliances also, especially the importer is from European Union. So obviously adhering to EU import regulations and safety standards is very essential in such case. The challenges may relate to market research. Understanding the European markets, demand and preferences is crucial for the success for the importer, because he has to sell it, but he is a regular importer, so will not be talking about this part of it. Another very important challenge relate to the payment terms and currency exchange. Negotiating secure payment methods, very important, and managing currency exchange rates is necessary in such cases. Then export documentation, accurate and complete documentation is vital for customs clearance and legal compliances. But to do the accurate and complete documentation in such kind of transactions requires very careful selection of international payment terms and international commercial terms. So our focus is more on these two difficulties in this particular discussion, that is the payment terms and the commercial terms. Other challenges that we should know may relate to the insurance of the cargo, environmental and sustainability considerations, and very importantly, the coordination with multiple suppliers. The overseas buyer must contract with several small and medium-sized exporters, introducing challenges in coordination, overall costs and performance risks. Given this kind of complex scenario, the overseas importer faces a significant decision, that is of choosing the international payment terms and Incoterms 2020. How do you do that? What terms to choose? These decisions have a direct impact on the overall cost, risks and responsibility allocations in the transaction. Incoterms, as you have learned, define the obligation of the buyer and the sellers. In international trade, the choice of Incoterms determines who is responsible for various aspects such as transportation, insurance and risks at each stage of the journey. In this particular case, considering the multiple suppliers and the need for coordination with all of them, the choice becomes even more critical for both international commercial terms as well as the payment terms. So, as the students of this incredible course on export documentation and procedure on Udemy, let's ponder over the following important questions that arises in this particular case. The first thing is, what Incoterm would you recommend to the overseas European importer to minimize risks and streamline coordination with multiple suppliers. Second question that comes here in this, very important: how can the choice of international payment terms help address some of the challenges mentioned? And the third question rises: what strategies can the overseas importer adopt to ensure smooth coordination and minimize costs in the complex transaction, the overall cost, landed price? This real world scenario highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of international trade and making informed decisions of this type. Let's engage in a thoughtful discussion and explore potential solutions to these challenges. Excellent class. Let's hear your thoughts on this complex export scenario. Who of you would like to share their suggestions regarding the choice of payment terms and Incoterms and the reasons behind their choices and the overall strategy that we have asked for? Okay, please. Yeah, tell me.
Professor, I would recommend using the Incoterm, CIF, for this scenario. Since the animal feed needs to be transported in bulk by sea, it makes sense for the seller to handle the cost and logistics of the shipment. The overseas buyer would only be responsible for receiving the goods at the designated European port. As for payment terms, letter of credit seems like a secure option. It ensures that the seller receives payment once they meet the specified conditions.
Okay. Thank you, student, for your suggestion. Using CIF can indeed simplify matters for the buyer in terms of logistics and insurance. However, one potential drawback to consider is that it may place more cost burden on the seller, which could affect pricing, the prices that are offered by the seller to the importer, unit price. It will inflate the price. Additionally, CIF does not specify the responsibility for unloading the cargo in any case at the port of destination from the ship, which could lead to additional costs to the buyer in any case. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead. What's your suggestion?
Sir, I'd propose using the Incoterm FOB in this case. It places the responsibility on the seller to deliver the goods to the ship at the Indian port, reducing the buyer's risk and cost in the early stages of transportation. For payment terms, open account could work if the buyer has a long-standing relationship with the seller. It simplifies the payment process and reduces administrative overhead.
Okay, good try. This is an interesting perspective, student. FOB can indeed be advantageous for the buyer in terms of costs and risks. However, it places more responsibility on the buyer for the ocean freight, insurance, and delivery to the final destination in Europe. As for open account payment term, while it streamlines the payment process, it can be riskier for the seller, especially in a scenario with multiple suppliers. There is a potential cash flow challenge for the seller until payment is received. So it will definitely going to increase the unit price that is offered by the exporters, different exporters. So at least the average purchase price will go up. Okay, please go ahead. Yeah, what's your question? Yes, sure.
Professor, considering the need for coordination with multiple suppliers, I would recommend using the Incoterm, CIP, and payment terms documentary collections. CIP ensures the seller arranges and pays for the carriage to the European port, reducing the burden on the buyer. Documentary collections offer some security for both parties. It allows the buyer to receive the goods against payment or acceptance of a draft.
Student, your suggestion of CIP does simplify the transportation aspect for the buyer and offers insurance coverage. However, it is worth noting that CIP does not specify the unloading responsibility, and additional cost might arise at the European port. Documentary collection can be a good compromise, but it requires the existence of trust between the parties and may not provide the same level of security as a letter of credit, especially when you are dealing with several suppliers. It's not a single supplier. So having that kind of trust with everybody is very, very difficult. So these are all thoughtful suggestions that you are giving, and they highlight the complexities of choosing the right payment terms and international commercial terms in international trade of this type. It is crucial to weigh the benefits and drawbacks carefully, considering the specific circumstances of this export transaction. Let's continue our discussion like this, exploring other strategies and potential solutions to address the challenges we are outlining, we are having a discussion, pondering.